Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation 116. As always, I'm going to start us off with a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new God's sullen people have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threats of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, you seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heathen folly, bring all your hopes to loss. Take up the white man's burden, not tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian guys? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall weigh your gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy young grudge praise. Come thou to search our manhood through all of thankless years, no age with dear bought wisdom, the judgment joy of years. Take off the white man's burden through all the thankless years.
Okay, well, we might have a fairly short stream this evening, gentlemen, because despite me sending out a record number of stream links, I don't think yes. So, and I'm not very good on my own, to be honest. Never said I was, never claimed I was. However, I did criticize PA this week in my Discord. And there are some people in my Discord who think PA are a good thing. I'm not against PA as an organization. I'm just against anything that Mark Collett runs, because my considered opinion is Mark Collett is a British government asset. That's why he's still walking around free. And he always has walked around free, despite being supposedly, in inverted air commas, exposed by at least 2 TV documentaries. And we've all seen the famous photograph where he's like towered over by the blonde girl with the swastika tat on her tip, who towers over him because, nothing says British nationalist more than being a manlet. Yeah, and all that stuff. I wouldn't trust Mark Collett as far as I could throw him. I've got to say, I would not. Some people on my Discord disagree with that, and I guess that makes me unpopular sometimes, but I'm not going to change that opinion. Because I know how British intelligence works. I served in Northern Ireland in the early 1980s, and like the provisional IRA, who would take you outside and shoot you in the back of the head if they even slightly suspected you might be a grass. That's what they would do. But despite that, British intelligence, and they had little cells of like 4 or 6 blokes who only knew stuff about stuff. Despite that, British intelligence completely infiltrated them, to the extent that by the time the Northern Ireland Agreement came along, Britain was actually winning that damn war. So yeah, but I saw that. I used to stand outside dole offices taking photographs of PIRA, provisional IRA guys, going in to get their British dole checks, which they would take and then go and try and kill young British soldiers or women and children or anyone else they wanted to, because PIRA's a Marxist, well, it was a Marxist organization. And if you now look in Southern Ireland, you'll find their political wing, Sinn Féin, who's also a Marxist organization, and it is Sinn Féin that is overwhelmingly pushing for Brits out, Somalians in. And that's just what they're doing. Like, they really don't care about the Brits anymore. What they want nowadays is as many third world black and brown people in Southern Ireland, the Irish Republic, as they can possibly get. That's what they're trying to do. And no surprise to me, because PIRA, provisional IRA, were absolutely Marxist. The leadership of PIRA were absolutely Marxist back in the 80s. So no surprise to that. Now, there is a dude I've been trying to say I would give a plug to on this channel for some time, and I want to do so. So let me just go and find his channel, because I think he's a good bloke. He's an Irishman, by the way. Sorry, dead air. He is an Irishman, by the way, a genuine Southern Irishman. But these days, I think that the Brits and the Irish and everybody else, we have bigger things to worry about than our historical rivalries and dislikes. I really do, because everyone wants to destroy us all these days outside the British Isles. So there we are. So I'm going to go find this dude. Sorry, I don't have the best computer, guys, at the moment. My good computer blew up some months ago, and I can't afford to replace it. Being a ex-soldier, we didn't make a lot of money anyway. Anyway, the dude I want to suggest you go and subscribe to is called Planet of the Gale, which I think is Planet of Gael. Planet of the Gale. He's a good guy. Strikes me as a very good man. He's been on one of the streams with me, and I think he's a good bloke. He's a Irish Republican. He's a Irish guy from the Republic of Ireland, but I think he's a genuine nationalist rather than the Sinn Féin type who goes for Brits out, Somalians, Pakistanis in. So yeah, there's that. Okay. So there's that, which I wanted to do for a couple of weeks. I actually forgot 1 week. Apologies. There is another thing I wanted to talk about is that you can now send us, should you so desire, of course, you can now send us super chats via Entropy. And I will put the link in the chat. There you go, boys. And if you want to ask a super chat, you can do so via that link. I was hoping to have that working last week, but it wasn't. Davey in the chat says, the new plastic paddy is Sinn Féin. Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I don't know, guys. As I said, sent out a load of links this week. Didn't get one single person come on at the moment. Although, to be fair, Ataman said he may come on, but he's going to be late, which is perfectly acceptable because, Ataman's here 9 weeks out of 10 anyway. And hopefully he's having fun in the meantime. But anyway. So, having said all that, if you guys have got questions, I'll answer you. You don't have to use the super chat thing. You can just ask in the chat. And we'll answer you, I guess. Because I'm not really good on doing streams on my own. I don't like doing streams on my own. I don't know. Some people can do stream of consciousness and all this sort of thing. Ain't really my deal. Bill Bauer says he saw an English electric Canberra fly by a few days ago. Well, one of the best ever British jet bombers, so wouldn't surprise me totally. The Rhodesians used them very successfully. The Americans copied them. I think the Americans called them a B-57, but they were actually a slightly altered version of the English electric Canberra. Well, I don't know. I don't think Anzac Day is going to be very important if Albanese, the Australian socialist prime minister, gets his way. He wants to make Anzac Day our day. And if you vote in favour of the voice, that's what you're voting for. If you vote in favour of the voice, you're voting anti-Anzac Day. And I hope every Australian realises that, because that's the truth. Yeah, it was a lovely plane, absolutely. And I mean, the RAF was still using them. I'm not sure up until 2000, but very close to that as recon planes, because they actually were very good aircraft. And like I said, the Americans copied them. The B-57, I think. I might be wrong about the B number, but the Americans did copy them and had a load of them that were basically copies of the camera. And the Americans don't copy many British planes, to be honest. But yeah. So there's that. Donald Trump, I hear, has been like arraigned. Does that mean? Hang on. Did the Australian Liberals lose more? Yeah, they have, mate. Yeah, they have. Like Australia is like, you know, they used to say it was like a prison colony in the Southern Ocean. Apparently these days that's like a compliment, really. For many Australians, I know there are many, many, many good Australians, but like for ordinary average Australians, it just seems like it doesn't matter what Labor do to you, you'll still vote for them, which is a bit sad in my own humble opinion. But yeah, it is. So there's that. You might be right, Bilboa. I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't know. I don't follow local politics that closely. Mighty Balzac says, flew the Shackleton until 1991, which was essentially a Lancaster. Well, look, the until 1991, Shackletons flew that late as an airborne early warning aircraft, which I'm sure you know. But Shackletons were a development of Lincolns, which were a development of Lancasters. And actually, Shackletons were a fair bit more advanced than that. Even South Africa had Shackletons, by the way, in the up to the 80s. So yeah, no problem with that. This is going to be a very short stream, guys, as we're going in the moment. What? Rod Hull says, his sons and daughters still on the box over there? I have no idea, mate. I live outside Melbourne in Victoria. So what's still on the box in Australia, I don't know. You could be right. I never watch those things. When you say that, Michael, 19C fan, are you talking about the same thought who was doing all the dancing on blokes, like as a Milif or whatever you call them. Because I'd be surprised if that was the truth. But maybe, I don't know. All I know about prisoner cell H is half the scenery used to move and they were supposed to be in a jail. And it was about women in a prison. That's all I know about that show. Okay, well, fair enough. I don't know. I don't think women should be in charge of anything, but I mean, I'm a misogynist and I don't pretend otherwise, so whatever. Like I watched the recent thing in New Zealand with Kelly J. Keane and Let Women Speak, and I watched all those how can I describe them on YouTube? All those LGBTQ XRYC, whatever number of letters they give them these days, trying to kill this poor woman, this poor married mother woman. And she got out because of her male bodyguards, and her supporters got out because of a group of Christian blokes who decided they would go and help them to get out. Otherwise, they would have got very seriously hurt, at least. And the New Zealand police didn't intervene until after Kelly J. Keane was almost away. And they didn't intervene not because they couldn't have, but because the government told them not to. The recent school shooting in America, for example, there were many people literally posting things saying, don't misname this person. This is the person who murdered people all over the place in the school. But you should not misname them. Now, just imagine if that had been a straight white bloke, do you think anyone would have said that? Don't misname them, don't do this, let's protect them? No. It was purely because that was a female to male trans thing. Won't call it a human because it was a thing that killed people. But then you're supposedly, don't misname this murderer. I don't know. I've never seen this sort of thing before, really, where you're not supposed to misname murderers. Come on, guys. I mean, what's happening here? Are we living in, like, clown world? Because we are. I mean, obviously we are. But, yeah. So there you go. But yeah, it's just an amazement to me. Even though they were Michael 19th C fan, and we all know they were. But yeah, I don't get it, mate. I don't get it. Kill kids. But if you're a trans person, the most important thing is not that you're a murdering filth. It's that don't misname that trans person who is a mentally ill person who can't work out which sex they are. John Best, that may well be true. And whenever I ever said I was a big fan of Suella Braverman, can't remember I ever have, but, whatever you say. Even if that's true. And even if it is true, I don't really care. I mean, all right, let me give you another piece of news. David Cole is a pretty well-known Jewish Holocaust revisionist. And his conclusion is that, like, under 4 million people of a certain religion or race died in World War II, rather than 6 million. And he had an excellent channel on YouTube. But this Jewish man has had his channel completely destroyed and removed by YouTube for reasons I can't work out. Don't know what they are. Apparently, he got in an argument with some people on Twitter or whatever, and YouTube just removed his channel. And his channel was entirely inoffensive, except for the fact he said, like, the people who died in World War II of a certain ethnicity, etc., were probably under 4 million rather than 6 million. But that was enough to get his channel weird. So yeah, there you go. And look, I'm not somebody who says the JQ is completely rubbish. Don't think it is completely rubbish. There is some truth to it. But the idea that everything and every single bad thing that's happened in the West is down to that group of people is plainly ridiculous, to be honest. It just is. It's really silly. And also makes every like Western Christian or it just makes everyone else like so weak. It's unbelievable. And sorry, I don't believe it. And also Rishi Sunak, a small hat. The recent bloke who's just won power in Scotland. God, doesn't he look great in a kill? Isn't a small hat, you know? So it's not just that. You have to be a little bit more intelligent than that dudes, in my honest opinion. So yeah, there we go. All right, guys. This is going to be a very short stream unless you carry on. Davey 1602 says quite correctly. Well, Rishi or Hamza were elected. I don't know. I thought Hamza was elected, but Rishi certainly wasn't. No, Rishi was imposed. Not even the Conservative Party members got to vote for Rishi because they wouldn't have, and everyone knew it. That was a total con. I thought Hamza was elected, but I mean, I don't know what the supposedly Scottish Nationalist Party does to organise its elections. Davey also mentions Leo Varadkar, who isn't he some sort of gay Middle Eastern type person? Just exactly who you'd expect to be running someone on. But, you know, whatever. John Best, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it for 1 second. Look, the only bad people these days are straight white men, really. Like, if you watch any modern TV series or any modern film, what the Americans call movies, the only bad guys are always straight white men. And the other guys are never allowed to be bad at all. Anyone else other than straight white men are never allowed to be bad. And we're not supposed to notice this, of course. We're supposed to just watch it and say, oh, this isn't funny. but you're not supposed to believe it. Oh, sorry, you're not supposed to disbelieve it. Every single bad person in any TV series or modern film is a straight white man. Every single one of them, with no exceptions. And all the good people are anything but straight white men. That's just the way it is. But there you go. I noticed Brian Borrows in the chat. Brian Borrow, go and check out a good dude called Planet of the Gale. Gael. Planet of the Gale. He has a good channel. You should support him as an Irishman, because he's an Irishman. And get other people to go and support him. I've been trying to plug this guy for 2 weeks, and I forgot last week. So there you go. Well, if that's true, John Best, it will be a toss-up as to who was sure of him and Rishi Sunak. Would it not? So there you go. Dear God. And I'm not against short blokes. I mean, look, guys, if you're 5'8" or whatever, there are huge numbers of girls who are anything from 4'9" to 5'4". There are large numbers of women like that, even though Hollywood will never show you that. But it is true. There are many. I once went out. I'm 6'2", by the way, right? About 200 pounds. But there are. I once went out with this chick, and she was a psychologist, by the way, and her whole back was this beautiful Chinese dragon. And I don't really like chicks with tats, but this was like beautiful. It really was. She must have spent thousands of dollars on it. But she was 4'9". And do you know who used to slag her off? It was other blokes who used to say, other women who used to say she was hunting outside her height range, because I was 6'2" and she was 4'9". But she was drop dead gorgeous. There is no reason, as a bloke who is like 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", 5'9", you cannot find a girl who is shorter than you. Loads of girls are short. Armin, thank you so much for joining us. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, could you?
Well, I was getting desperate, mate. Okay. So I've just been talking stuff, as I do, you know?
Yeah.
Brian Borrow, I just want to say this before you go anything further. Just subscribe to Planet of the Gale. Planet of the Gale is a very good Irish nationalist channel, in the sense of Irish nationalists, not bloody Sinn Féin, who want like as many brown and black people as they can get, but like a guy who actually wants Ireland to stay Irish. He's a good channel. Go and subscribe to it. Sorry, and carry on, mate.
Well, yeah. I mean, you were saying about short women. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with nothing wrong with short babes.
Absolutely no, there isn't.
Yeah.
Little chicks are cute.
I mean, it's not like a preference of mine, but I think I've only ever dated women that were pretty short. I don't even know how that happens, but yeah, dated a girl that was 4'11" at one point. But
yeah, me too. I've done that. Yep. She was lovely.
Yeah.
You know, like really cute, and you could pick her up so easily. And yeah, no, absolutely. I got nothing wrong with little short girls. It's kind of like you get them because that's the way DNA goes, you know. Women don't need to be big. They don't have to do fights and bring down woolly mammoths and rhinos and so on, you know. They just don't have to do that stuff. So why do they need to be big? They don't.
Yeah, and like the height of, I mean, I'd like to see it. Maybe there's probably some research on this out there, but I'd like to see if there's any correlation between like a mother's height and their son's height. Because I've known plenty of guys who were they were tall guys, like tall, as tall, some of them taller than me. And they had like a dad who was of average height and a mother who was absolutely minuscule. So
yeah, absolutely. Look, my dad was 5'9". My mother was, I think, 5'8".
mm,
I'm 6'2". My brother's 6'3". So, and he also sometimes misses generations as well.
yeah.
So yeah, but there is no reason why you can't, and particularly with like modern nutrition, which is much better than it used to be. There's no reason you as a guy of like say 5'9" can't marry a chick of 5'4", and your son might not be 6 foot. There's no reason that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Because it does often miss generations and all the rest of it, And these days, like nutrition is so good, relatively speaking, to like in the old days that Like my old man was 5'9", but like had he been, he got much better food in World War II. He was born in 1933, so like he was almost 7 when World War II broke out, and about 12 when it finished. But when he joined the army, his height sprang up because suddenly he got pretty good food.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in the last 200 years, we've seen heights get back to what they were in like the 1400s and surpass them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I do sometimes wonder if we'll start getting shorter again at some point, because like diets now, people get a lot of food, but they're increasingly getting a lot of trash food though. I think people will over exaggerate this a little bit, but especially like in the last sort of 10 years, food has gotten kind of crummy in terms of like macronutrients and as such.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I like my dad got taller in the army because in the army they give you like 3 meals a day, and they're not always very well cooked, but they're generally fairly nutritious.
Yeah, and it's gonna be like a solid meat and 2 veg, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Ataman, do you mind talking for like 10 minutes? Sorry, 5 minutes, because my dog needs to go outside. He's looking at me from the door.
I don't know what to talk about, but
anything you like, mate.
So, has anyone in chat seen this? Seen the reaction, I should say, which is probably more interesting to this tragedy, this horrific school shooting in America of this Christian school. I mean, we saw this thing with. I know that Carl Benjamin commented on this Madonna thing where she's. I say her. It's obviously like a PR team or a management or something have essentially said that all the proceeds from their upcoming concert in Nashville is going to go to this some sort of trans rights group, which is, I mean, it obviously they're going to say, well, it's about the group, and obviously we condemn this shooter, this, that, and the other, but it is going to feel a bit like a spit in the face, I know that I remember speaking to people in Manchester who said that some of the "Don't Look Back in Anger" stuff felt like a slap in the face to them after that tragedy in the Manchester arena. So, we see this more and more as the years go by. This sort of push for it's sort of this slipping of the mask, where you see sort of just how much the regime just actively doesn't like you, actively loathes you and your values. We've seen some of this, like there was this take by Curtis Yarvin. I saw some people talking about this. I think Dave the Distributist and some others talked about this, that Curtis Yarvin said that Biden winning will actually essentially help the right because it will calm the left down. I actually remember reading that specific Grey Mirror Substack when he wrote it. Sort of, I think it was like either the day before or directly after the election. And he and of course, to an extent, Yarvin was right, but to a large extent as well, like it's kind of shown how full of resentment a lot of these people are, because they're just sort of going after that middle America now. And we're seeing it, yeah, and we're seeing that with the reaction to this awful shooting as well.
You talking about the trans shooting that happened?
Yeah,
where they were mostly concerned about not misnaming the trans murderer.
Yeah.
Just disgusting. I just disgusting.
Mm.
I'm sorry, by the way. My little dog is having a poo, so I'll go back and let him in a minute. I have a little cross-check Russell rescue dog called Rudy, and he's a good little chap.
We don't hear him on stream as much anymore.
Oh, look, he's older, and so like he doesn't do that going crazy stuff. But he does snore sometimes, which I find quite cute. But anyway,
yeah, but I mean, like Michael in chat says, there was supposed to be a trans day of vengeance. I mean, how sort of, how ridiculous, how on the nose is that? This idea that, because they, there was what I think they said there was like it was like 38 or 42 trans people killed in America last year, and that's terrible. That's awful.
Yep.
But like basically none of them were the result of like actual, you could say, hate crime. I think there might have been a couple, because they don't know the motives for all of them. But we've now got a situation where it could be possible that this year there will be more hate crimes committed, hate murders committed by trans people than there are to trans people. Almost like 1350 on steroids.
Well, I mean, Ataman, I mean, did you watch the Kelsey J. Keane Let Women Speak thing in New Zealand? I'm sure you did. You've seen it somewhere.
I've seen about it. I haven't seen it anything specific though.
She was lucky not to get very seriously hurt, and the only reason she didn't was her male bodyguards. And the people who went there to support her, the only reason they didn't get very seriously hurt was a group of Christian men who went there, who after Kelly J. Keane had bugged out, went and saved them.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. Or there would have been very serious injuries, at least, at that place.
Yeah.
But, you look at the horse-faced feminists who used to run New Zealand, and everything that's going on there now. And the New Zealand cops did not intervene until Kelly J. Keane was almost at their police cars.
Yeah.
They could have intervened at any stage, but they never did because they didn't want to. Well, they were told not to, I guess is more accurate. But, if you're a cop, what are you supposed to be doing in the world if you're just obeying the orders of bad people? And I've seen plenty of that in Victoria in Australia during the lockdowns, where cops were being absolutely evil, totally. So, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, we saw as like with the police reaction, we've seen this quite a bit in the last couple of years. I mean, that's not really any different from like, the enormous disproportionate response that the police did to, like, let's say, anti-lockdown protests.
Yep.
I think you had more of that in Australia than we did in the UK, but you could still see it here in the UK. And then you had, you could just see it in the sort of the way police respond to certain things. There was a case recently of this person called Brianna Gray. Oh, was it Gay? I can't remember. They were a transgender individual, we'll say. They were quite young, and they got murdered. Now, actually, funny enough, this was all in the press. They really made a big deal out of this. It's disappeared for about 2 weeks. So I suppose it's going through like the early slow stages of the court trial. but the police initially said there was like they weren't investigating it as a hate crime, just as a murder, and then there was sort of a huge pushback. And 2 days later, they went back and reinvestigated it as a hate crime. Which I mean, it waits to be seen, but it kind of seems a bit like they were kind of leaned on to pursue it in that angle. But we'll have to see.
Am I right in saying, Ataman, you may know this, I don't, that the school that the transgender individual killed people in, was that a Christian school? Because that's what some people tell me.
Yeah, I don't think it was a particularly hardcore Christian school, but it was I think it was like something Covenant school. So it was a Christian school by and large.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, if that had been a Muslim school or a Jewish school or almost any other like faith school other than Christian, that would have absolutely been a hate crime, wouldn't it?
Well, that's the funny thing with the intersectionality, isn't it? Like, you remember that what's that guy's name? Is it Louis Farrakhan, the like the Black Power guy?
Yep.
You know, he went round calling Jews termites or something like that a few years back, and the social media powers that be didn't really know how to take it. You know, this whole sort of you know, like the sort of more liberal skeptic types, when they talk about the intersectionality, they have kind of got a point, is that when you have this intersectionality, how do you resolve conflict between those intersectional groups? You know, it's a bit of a minefield for them. So with the Louis Farrakhan thing, they actually allowed him to carry on as he was for a while, but I do think they eventually sort of gave him the boot from some platforms. You know, because of course it was the Jews he was criticizing.
And then we've recently had what are they called? The literacy has now been totally demonetized, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of par for the course. I mean, they've been smart to build a platform off of YouTube, and YouTube is essentially just there for highlights.
Yeah, but the reason they gave for it was they're associated with Sargon of Akkad, which is an old YouTube channel which hasn't been used for years now, as far as I know.
Yeah. I mean, his old channel wasn't banned, though, was it? So they can't say it was banned, like,
no.
What do they call it? Ban dodging or whatever.
No, it was never banned, but that's what they've done, and he's now totally demonetized, and it's not him, because he actually doesn't run the Lotus Ears. That hasn't made any difference. They're still totally demonetized.
Yeah.
And I also noticed recently David Cole, who is a Jewish man, but who is also a Holocaust revisionist. Yeah. He's mates with what's that British dude, the British historian, who I don't always totally
David
agree
Irving.
With. Yeah, he's mates with David, and I mean mates with David Irving. But basically, his idea was that looking into all the sources and all the rest of it, and as I say, this is a Jewish man that probably about 3.5 million small-hatted people were murdered in World War II, rather than 6. And other than that, his channel was entirely inoffensive. Like, he used to talk about movies, and because he was involved in movies, Jewish guy, you know, many of them are involved in movies. But he talked about movies and stuff like that. And his channel has been just completely yeeted off YouTube after, I don't know, like 8, 9, 10 years. Just because of his opinions on the Holocaust. So, yeah.
That is flying pretty close to the sun, though. I mean, there's actually...
He's Jewish. He's hardly anti-Semitic.
Yeah, sure. Jewish, but there's actually an AA he done a talk at the event on the octopus. Maybe I shouldn't refer to him as AA. There's this academic there called like Mima
Fair enough.
Panini or some such. and he gave a talk, and he at one point he had a graph up, and he was trying to map out, and I'm not sure I entirely agree with all of it, but he was trying to map out like what is acceptable pushback all the way to what is totally unacceptable. And like Holocaust revisionism was like the bottom of the pit, you know, that's the thing you cannot touch. And like, for example, trans rights at the top, or trannies generally, is something you can push back on and still exist within the system and enjoy some rewards. So think of like, you know, the Daily Wire guys and stuff like that, or you know, Jordan Peterson, you know, and stuff like that. Versus of course, like David Cole or Irving and stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, look. I mean, look. It's all very communist, if you ask me. It's like living under Mao. Where we're going now is like living under Chairman Mao and his little red book. And do you not think so?
I'd say it's worse in certain ways, because at least like there's that guy Joel Davis, who I know you don't necessarily agree with on everything, but he has this take where he says that that like under Stalin you knew the things you weren't allowed to say. As under our current regime, a lot of regular people get caught out because there's a lot of things that they believe are okay, which are just not acceptable. And I think a good example of this was there was a story a few years back. It was when I first started streaming, and I went on with that Anglo Nile, and he told me about it on there. But there was a story of a guy who worked for Morrison's, and he posted a Billy Connolly sketch, or Billy Connolly stand-up routine to his Facebook page.
You mean the excellent comedian from Glasgow, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, Billy Connolly, being a Gen Xer, he's got a bit of an anti-religious sort of shit-libby streak in him. And he does a bit in this stand-up routine where he he attacks all religions, and and of course his prime target, as with most of the Gen Xers, because they were a bit cowardly on this front, is Christianity. But he does kind of have a dig at Islam as well. And this guy, for posting this on his Facebook page, lost his job at Morrison's for Islamophobia. You know, and that's the thing. Like, you know, I mean, admittedly, it's a bit tricky, because you probably could find examples in the Soviet Union of like a guy who said certain things, who was a popular celebrity or popular national figure, and then 10 years later he's out of the frame, right? I mean, literally in some instances, you know, some of those people were literally wiped out of photos.
All right, I don't know about this, but since we've been just joined by Mitch, who speaks Russian, is that the case, Mitch? And excuse me for a minute, gents. I'm going to let my little dog back in.
I mean, I think like Andrei Tarkovsky. I mean, he ended up getting exiled from the Soviet Union because a lot of his films had Christian sort of messages in them. Like you'll see, like Stalker, where water is used a lot, and of course water is like a Christian connotation because it's associated with purity and all this.
Yeah.
So the Soviet Union had to, in the end, they just chucked him out of the Soviet Union altogether, to the point where he had to go to Italy in his last years.
Yeah, and it's like, so there's definitely, but even then, right, in the Soviet Union, that was kind of like up front. You knew who'd fallen out with the regime. You knew where those people stood, because the regime was quite upfront about who it was exiling and so on and so forth. But here, Billy Connolly's still a public figure. He still goes on TV. He still goes around the block. He still gets put out there, and yet yet people can lose their jobs for just reposting things that Billy Connolly has said before, which I'm sure is still actually played on, like, you know, the Dave TV channel today.
Yeah, it's worth noting now. at least with even not with the worst communist like Stalin, at least everyone knew, okay, you can't slag off Stalin, you can't say anything about him. You knew where the parameters of speech lied. Whereas nowadays, you can't even make a film these days without thinking about what happened in 20 years' time if your film is actually going to get banned or not. Like you can imagine, The Northman by Robert Eggers in 20 years' time will be the same status as like Passion of the Christ.
Yeah. And I mean, Mango said, I'm not sure people knew what they weren't allowed to say under Stalin. Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong about this. I'm sure there were definitely things that were very sort of grey areas or weren't particularly well covered in the public sphere. But amongst like the NKVD, it was known that these things weren't allowed. But and that led to certain. So, but you know, still, it's just. There are and of course, you know, the same things aren't being visited on people for wrong think or wrong speech that they were then, but I don't know, I kind of see the way they're ramping a lot of this stuff up, and I think could we see that in our lifetime? Quite possibly. You know, I mean, we're already seeing like with the January 6ers. I mean, they weren't quite like executing them or doing anything particularly dark to them, but then at the same time, you know, I kind of think that for some of these people that do quite mundane things, like the guy that filmed that jogger, I can't remember the guy's name, that got shot in America, and the guy that filmed it got like life in prison.
Wow.
You know, in some ways, for some of these instances where people are getting thrown away for really long times, like for life, for things that are not necessarily right, but are you know, that their punishment is just so far beyond the pale. In a lot of those instances, I'd probably say that execution is probably better. I wouldn't want to be locked in a cell for the rest of my days, managed by middle manager types.
I'd sooner be killed, frankly. Yeah, absolutely. Hang me, please. Break my neck.
And Davey said, Davey1602 said, talking about political prisoners, it looks like the guy posting Hillary memes in 2016 is going to prison for 10 years.
Yeah, no,
that's absolutely mad.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw. Imagine posting fucking memes about an evil bitch like Hillary Clinton, and that gets you 10 years in prison.
Yeah, and
she was the one who arrived after Gaddafi had been caught and had a bayonet stuck up his rear end, and she said, we came, we saw him, he died, and laughed.
Yeah,
that's all right though. That's all right.
Yeah, and the thing is that Richard Spencer actually reacted to this with a thumbs up on Twitter, by the way, if people want to know how far that guy's fallen.
What a surprise.
Yeah, I saw a clip of that guy earlier going like, what is it? Oh yeah, he's saying we can't debate crime rates done by black people because white people had empires.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It's not related though at all, you know. Really ain't. Guys, let me just point out to you that if you look on our pinned comments, you'll see an Entropy stream live. If you guys want to send us a super chat, and I hope someone does, not because I want to make any money, because we're not going to make any money from this, just to see if it works, please feel free. But yeah.
You won't get your money back for testing it.
Sorry?
You won't get your money back for testing.
Oh no, the any money you send us will eventually go to me getting a slightly better computer. But there we go. But you won't get your money back. If anyone wants to send us I don't know, $5 or something, go for it. I just want to see if it works. That's all. But yeah, I can't imagine anyone getting 10 years in prison for slagging off one of the most evil women in the history of the world, i.e. Hillary Clinton. I mean, it's just impossible. And many of those January 6th protesters are still in jail.
Yeah.
Like January 6th, 2020, they're still in jail 3 years
I think
later.
I think they're just starting to release some of them now.
Yeah, they're just.
I mean,
trying to
some of
teach
them.
it.
There was one guy. There was like an old Navy officer. He was released, I think, within 6 months. But yeah, there was a few that were like still in there for a really long time.
It's just disgusting, and it isn't anything. Like I don't know. These guys, they go on about World War II and all this shit, and which part of World War II are we supporting here, other than the Hitler part or the Stalin part? That's the only bit.
Yeah.
It's and really it's the Stalin part that we're supporting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a mess. And this is I was saying this while you were letting the dog out the first time. That they had this like I was saying about this Yarvin, this Curtis Yarvin Substack, where they were saying about where he was claiming that Biden winning might be good for the right because it would calm the left down. And that's definitely happened to a degree, because of course we've seen thousands of journalists laid off just because there's no work for them, because there's no like ragey clickbait headlines for them to type up.
Until recently, of course.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that they've gone after sort of Middle America in a way that we kind of didn't previously imagine or see. Kind of in economic terms as well. Like you had the whole pipeline thing and some other things quite early on. But yeah, they're really just displaying sort of a level of, I mean, maybe cruelty is too strong of a word, but there's definitely some resentment there.
I don't think cruelty is too strong of a word myself, but all right. I mean, look, if you look at someone like JFK, who, along with his brother, were both having affairs with Marilyn Monroe. And Marilyn Monroe ended up dead. And I'm sure that had nothing whatever to do with JFK or his brother. Really. I'm absolutely certain of this. I would not want for a single second for anyone to think that anyone killed Marilyn Monroe over JFK or his brother, because that would obviously never have happened, because those men were so good and everyone around them was so good. But you look at that. But on the other hand, here we have Donald Trump, who had an affair with a porn star, and apparently can get arrested over that.
Yeah. I mean, the details on that seem kind of sketch as well, because didn't they first try to claim that he did it with taxpayer money? That was the whole impetus behind it.
Which he didn't. It was somewhere in money he paid to his lawyers.
Yeah, and they seemed to like have to pivot after that, which seemed a bit weird. I don't really know what the game is, because like you can listen to some of his more recent speeches, and it kind of seems like Trump may not have learned anything from his previous 4 years, which he's
I think he probably didn't, to be honest with you. I'm not a huge Trump supporter, but like an American president had a, can you call it an affair, I suppose, with a porn star stroke stripper stroke prostitute, and paid her. Well, I would like to know how many American presidents haven't done that. I mean, obviously, apart from Bill Clinton, who never had sexual relations with that girl. But whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, didn't get arrested.
But this is the thing, right? Like they kind of like, it's not going well, right? I'm not saying that Biden's going to there's a lot of people on the right that are like, oh, Trump's been handed the presidency, everyone hates Biden. There's still ridiculous amounts of support for Biden, considering that it hasn't gone very well. America's not doing too great. It's not, it's doing fine, but it's in sort of like historical or sort of or in its trajectory, you could say. But for sort of as presidential administrations going, it's had quite a few blips. It's had some serious issues. It's not going particularly amazingly for them. And this would, of course, be the sort of regime that would lose an upcoming election, or could lose, you could say, an upcoming election.
Could.
But the thing is, if I was them, right? If I was their guy, if I was paid to advise them and I was giving them advice, neutral advice based on power politics and everything else, I would actually just say let Trump win, because then he can take the fall for 4 years. You can blame everything on him. You can rage against him. He's not going to get a great deal done like he didn't do the first 4 years. He's going to cut down immigration a bit and try and bring in some healthcare and transparency bill to make diabetes medication a bit cheaper, which they wouldn't allow for some bizarre reason.
Still won't build a wall.
Yeah, probably wouldn't finish the wall, though he'd probably get a bit more of it built. I mean, at this point, they've kind of accepted that the wall's going to get finished anyway, eventually. So why not just let him finish it? If it doesn't work, they can then throw him under the bus for it for wasting money. But they don't seem to be willing to do that. They don't seem to be behaving in a particularly logical way. And you've even seen some of their own guys like going up on the press and going like, don't do this to Trump, you're going to hand him 2024. I'm not sure if that's true, but that seems to be their fear, and yet no one's listening.
I don't think that's true at all for a minute,
no.
To be honest. I wish it was in some ways, but yeah. Alice Little in the chat says, E. Howard Hunt of the CIA claimed that Cord Meyer, also CIA, was the main conspirator in the JFK assassination. JFK slept with his wife. I reckon JFK did occasionally sleep with his wife, but I have to say, were I JFK or his brother, and I could have slept with Jackie Kennedy, who was a skinny, not very attractive bitch, in my opinion, and I could have slept with Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was going to win 99.975% of the time out of 100. And I believe that JFK and his brother were both sleeping with Marilyn Monroe. And I'm sure that the fact that they were both doing that had nothing to do with Marilyn Monroe dying. It was a complete coincidence. That's all I will say on that matter. Mitch, what do you reckon is going on in Ukraine these days?
I mean, news has been sparse on that sort of thing. I mean, if anything, Telegram's just more buzzing about China. Like, apparently there's a surge of deals now where, like, for example, China and Brazil are now dealing not in USD anymore, but Brazil will pay for Chinese goods with yuan and whatnot. So, you just get a lot of people claiming that by the end of the year, the petrodollar will be done because more countries are planning on ditching it.
I mean, what do you think that will do for sort of I mean, what will that do for American sort of power projection in sort of Eastern Europe, let's say? Because we've already kind of seen this issue where America kind of seems to be a bit patchy on whether it's actually going to back up certain allies in the Eastern Europe or not, and that seems to me to kind of make certain people a bit nervous. I mean, I kind of sometimes think that the reason places like Finland and Sweden and that want to join NATO is actually because they think they need a more concrete agreement to get the US to act in their defense, because they're not sure if the US would do it otherwise.
Like, I mean, it's like Washington's like, what it looks like is, you get half of Washington that wants to just endlessly hate on the Russians, and so they arm up, the Ukrainians and the Poles to be used as cannon fodder, etc. But then the other half, you'll see them writing articles in like National Review or whatever, going, "Oh yeah, but China's actually the real threat. We have to cut our losses with Ukraine and arm up Taiwan for when China makes it apply." So it's like even the neocons are just like split down the middle, from what I see.
Yeah, well, it's like I mean, Michael in chat said America can borrow cheaply due to demand for the dollar for international trade. I mean, that is America's strength, but I mean, the funny thing with currencies is they're always backed by something, right? And it's like if they're not backed by gold, right? If you claim to have a fiat currency, what you actually have is a currency that's backed by tanks and aircraft carriers, right? and America has the ability to back up its currency with tanks and aircraft carriers. But I kind of worry. I mean, I don't really worry. I kind of hope that they fail, but I kind of have an inclination that going forward, they are kind of not prepared to use them like they used to. And as soon as people start noticing that, which I'm not sure if anyone will, but if someone is brave enough, ballsy enough, if it's China over Taiwan or Russia in Eastern Europe or whatever, as soon as a global power is ballsy enough to test them on that, and America blinks, I mean, that's not going to instantly spell the end, but we might start to see that currency, start to slip a little. I'm not sure though. It's very difficult to tell.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's like what you got the Middle East where America's position is completely folding on itself. Like, or pretty much everyone aside from Israel is on the side of like the Russian-Chinese alliance. Like, you've got the Saudis.
Hang on, Mitch. Even Israel's not totally on the side of the Americans. Israel has kind of walked a fairly neutral line on America and Russia in Ukraine.
I mean, I'm talking in context of the Middle East, where, for example, you'll have America, they'll blow up Iraq because Israel and Saddam Hussein didn't get on, or Israel,
for sure.
Or you had Israel like paying off politicians to try and want Assad gone, but that didn't fall through. So Israel doesn't always get their way.
But what I'm trying to say, Mitch, is that Israel has not been, and in fact has noticeably not been, fully on the side of like Russia bad. It hasn't.
Yeah, it's a tenuous position where you got the Syrians and Iran who are allies with Russia now. If Israel gets on the bad side of Russia, Russia will just end up exporting loads of S-400s and tanks and what have you to those two countries, and it'll just. And you've already got a situation where the Saudis and Iran are now doing a détente with one another because you used to have a Cold War over issues like Syria and Yemen, and so the Americans and Israel used to leverage that sort of Saudi hatred for Iran, but CCP now getting the Saudis and the Iranians to come together in the same room. That's a pretty big deal for the Middle East. When you've got Iraq, which is always in chaos to the point where it's pretty much just an Iranian puppet at this point. Syria, obviously, there's a rebel army there still fighting the civil war, but they're only safeguarded from destruction by Turkish and American protection. As soon as America pulls out.
Can you tell me, Mitch? I thought that most of the rebel army in Syria these days, they're the really extreme Islamist types, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that's what America and Britain and the rest of the West is supposedly backing when we say we're fighting ISIS. We're not really, because the Arab Syrian army and the Russians are the guys who are really fighting the nasty bastards who will cut people's throats and enslave little girls and all this stuff. Is that not correct? I thought it was.
Yes, it's the Syrian rebels. I don't know what to call themselves, but a lot of them just turn out to be like not as hardline as ISIS, but if you ask them what kind of government they'd want like something like Islamic Republic, and generally just like want to kill off all the Christians and anyone who's not their version of Islam, pretty much. For example,
that's what I thought.
Yeah. Whereas Assad, for example, Assad was hated a lot by his own people because he banned. I think it was a hijab he banned at universities, and a lot of people spoke about that over him, including a lot of these rebels who end up rising against him. But
Mitch? What do you think about these claims of Syrian government chemical weapons attacks on people? Because I think they're just nonsense. So what do you think about those?
I mean, this is like years ago, isn't it? I mean,
Hmm.
I just think that I mean, isn't it? I think it's like pretty much a white helmets claiming that, and
And the
it was
white
like,
helmet was set up by MI5, of course, which is
yeah,
sorry, MI6, I beg your pardon,
I
which
can't
is
remember.
British intelligence around the world.
I
Complete
can't remember.
colonists.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. I know there was a Syrian girl and this sort of a Lebanese woman, Sarah Abdullah or something like that. They were just like, they spent years just proving how much of a gay op white helmets were because they were faking all these
100.
atrocities, saying,
100.
oh, Assad's government were gassing his own people and whatever. And it's just, it turned
What,
into a load
what
of
would he
bollocks.
have gained from gassing his own people exactly?
Yeah, that always seemed a bit weird to me. It didn't I don't know. I'm not really particularly very good at that stuff, but I was kind of looking at it at the time, and I was thinking, what's the strategic target involved in these particular attacks? It seemed a bit, and we were very quick, and by we I mean the West. We're very quick to kind of pull the trigger on him over it.
Yeah, I think it was a lie, and frankly, I think it was a lie. There was no reason for him to do that. As far as I can work out, look, I'm not saying Assad is a good guy because he's not, but can you run a Middle Eastern country as a good guy? Probably not. Assad and the Russians, as far as I can work out, are just trying to get Syria back to some sort of stability. Whereas what the West is doing is supporting virtually the same sort of people as the Islamic State to try and fight them, because they're the only guys who want to fight them. There's a big lie going on there.
Yeah, it's like in Syria, you've got the rebel army who, at this point, they're just, without American and Turkish protection, they'd be completely wiped out in the space of a week or something by Assad's forces. Then in the northeast, you've got this Rojava Republic, which is sort of anarcho-communist. I don't really know what to say about it, but Walsh apparently supports them, so that's enough to maybe condemn them.
That makes them bad.
Yeah. And then you also had ISIS, which, courtesy of Russian airstrikes and Assad's forces, are a complete misnomer. All the oil fields got taken, but not by the Russians. It was the Americans who took over the oil fields. And that's why 80% of Syria's oil production doesn't go towards the Syrian government. It goes to America's coffers.
What's the surprise? It's almost like they would do something like blow up the Nord Stream pipeline in order to provide Europe with all its liquid gas via 3 times as much expensive American liquid petroleum gas.
Yeah, it's especially tragic when you get, because I can't remember the name of the industrial firm, but there's this one German industrial firm in somewhere in northern Germany. It had been going on since 1380. So it survived the Reformation, it survived 2 world wars, Great Depressions, recessions, you name it. They went through a lot, but they couldn't survive Nord Stream 2 getting blown up.
Like many German industries. Look, I've had my gas heating on because it's been bloody cold here for the last 12 hours. Well, that's like a few $100s, trust me. It's like, what old age pensioners are going to do, I have no idea, mate. Really, I don't.
Well, they've been in the UK, they've been propping it up by just basically giving people money to the tune of like 60 quid, £67 a month. And I mean, that's obviously just making the economic problems we already have worse anyway. So, it's kind of a lose-lose situation in a way. And of course, the thing is, I mean, there's been some people, like I'm a bit more on the fence than you guys over the Russia-Ukraine thing. But one of the things I've seen people saying, which has kind of irked me, is I've seen a lot of people going, "Oh, the pro-Russia types were fear-mongering about like not being able to make it through the winter, and it's been fine." And it's like, right, but hang on though. If you go back and listen, what most of those people were saying, what Dave the distributor said, what many other people said is that
winter.
is that the first winter will probably be fine. It's going to be the second winter because it's going to take like 3 to 4 years to get any alternatives up online, or for this situation to be resolved. And it's just the case that the first winter is probably going to be fine. And even then, we've seen, they've already had to start taking, precautions. I know in Germany they had to, like in public buildings like swimming pools and that, they've had to like turn down all the thermostats and stop the water from going above a certain temperature in the showers and stuff like that. I best not talk about showers in Germany, but like to go back to the Assad thing, right? What's your Duke especially? What's your take on like Saddam Hussein? Because I was like a young guy when that kicked off. I was a teenager, and I remember and I really wasn't sure what to think about it. People kept saying about how evil he was, and I remember a few years after I read this absolute tome of a book by Robert Fisk called like The War for Civilization or something like that. And he paints a really horrifying picture of Saddam Hussein. But now when I look back, I kind of like you were saying about Assad, and you were saying you kind of have to be a rough guy to rule one of these countries. And I kind of see that in Saddam Hussein. And I do wonder, like they used to say about like the wood chipper. They said he had a wood chipper and he used to put people in it feet first. They never found the wood chipper. So I'm kind of, I'm even starting to get quite doubtful about claims like that as well now.
Oh, look, my view is Hussein was a bad man, all right? He really was a bad man. And he was capable of doing anything, really. Assad, the second Assad, who's in charge of Syria now.
Different kettle of fish, I suppose.
Yeah, I haven't seen him do any great massacres, apart from like rubbish the West comes out with about chemical attacks, which I think were absolute rubbish. I haven't seen him do that, but like no like liberal dude, nice liberal dude, is going to run a Middle Eastern country very well. I mean, to give you another example, I mean, look at all the shit that's going on at the moment in Israel with, what's his name, Netanyahu. Netanyahu is not a nice liberal dude, but I think he's probably pro-Israeli. But there are many people in the West who want to chuck him out because he's not liberal enough, not lefty enough, not in favor of LGBT enough. This is what you need to look at when you look at these things. Because that's what the West is about now. Like, when your embassies fly LGBTQ let's all fuck little girls flags above their embassies, which really is what they are.
That was standard with the American Empire.
Yeah, but let's not lie. That's what they're about. Because the next stage on our journey from LGBTQ is going to be little kids can have sex with adults, and that's all right. That is the next stage. That's why you've got 7-year-old little, in inverted commas, boys in gay nightclubs having money stuffed in their bikinis. That's where we are now. That's where we are now. And that's all right. That's all right. Oh, you can have a dad in Texas whose insane feminist wife wants to make their son a daughter. And the court has done at least twice now, I think, said, yeah, no, that's all right. And the dad can't do a thing about it. I mean, we're in a sick, dying society. We just are. I'm sorry, we just are in a sick, dying society where we don't even protect our own children.
Mm.
And I leave aside, obviously, all the so-called grooming gangs, in inverted commas, in the UK. Yeah, we're in a sick and dying society. Anyone who doesn't see that is insane. It's just like I want it to die quickly now. I want it to die quickly because that's the only way to save our children.
Mm.
Like honestly, with like the world is so bad, man. Like the only bad people allowed on TV or movies or films is straight white men. Everyone else is great.
Did you have you watched the new Avatar?
I don't even know what that is. Please tell
Oh,
me.
it's that it's the Alien film by
James Cameron.
oh, what's his name? Yeah, James
Cameron.
Cameron, the one that dived down to see the Titanic. Yeah, that's the one.
No, I haven't seen it. Oh, you mean? Oh, actually, yeah, I do know what you're talking about. No,
Yeah.
I know. I won't watch it either. But
See,
yeah,
that's
I know what you're talking
that's a
about.
film that's been made like in the last in the last year. It sort of was released in the last sort of 3-4 months.
Yeah.
And the cast of humans is I think entirely white. If there's any non-white ones, they're kind of not at the front.
But
And of course,
there are only voice actors, obviously, in that movie.
I think there are human characters in it. I'm not sure actually. I wasn't really paying much attention, but you know, it's fine to have an all-white cast if they are the evil colonists.
Yeah, of course it is. Because we're bad. Every one of us is evil and bad, and we need to pay.
I mean, you see this. I don't know if we didn't really get a chance to talk about this before, but there's been this Casey review that's come out about the Metropolitan Police. Is it called the Casey Review or the Casey Report? Anyway, so again, in typical Tory fashion, they have thrown out this report. First off, they got a woman to commission it who was a Blair, like a Blair character.
Waters. Right.
I think she was actually once called Blair's SAR for the homeless or something. And she's made this report, and it's kind of everything you kind of expect. She kind of shows that black officers in the Met Police get reprimanded for sort of misconduct at a vastly disproportionate rate.
Could that be that they actually do misconduct at a disproportionate rate?
No, any disparity is not evidence of them misbehaving, but any disparity, according to the report, is evidence of white prejudice.
So it's a lie, basically.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's kind of it's all just kind of it's ridiculous, and I don't actually meet anyone on a day-to-day basis that takes any of this stuff seriously. And people will tell me, they'll go, oh yeah, but you know, you're in this Twitter bubble. I'm not even talking about Twitter. I'm talking about people, because I actually do try to engage with people on politics, like in my workplace. Those poor souls, right, who have to listen to me spurg out about all this stuff in the press all the time. But you know, and they all laugh at it. They all think it's just hilariously stupid. I haven't really met anyone that doesn't. I think out of a workplace of like 25, I've met like 2 that would provide some pushback, but all the others all see this as ridiculous. It's generally roundly criticized as ridiculous. It's kind of, you kind of sit there and you think, how long can a society operate and function when everyone in that society doesn't take the promises or the founding myths of that society seriously? It could be forever, right? I don't know.
Well,
It doesn't seem very plausible, but it seems to be happening now. So
I kind of see what you're saying, and I just think that they think they're just going to overturn it. And that's the way it's going at the moment, because less and less normies, in inverted commas, and I'm sorry if you think calling people normies is an insult, but less and less normies, in inverted commas, even see what's going on now, as far as I can work out anyway. I don't know. Look, if you'd have said this to me 2 years ago, I'd have said British people would never stand for this, but they just do.
The thing
They
is, though,
just
you say stand for it, but I mean that's kind of the issue, though, isn't it? Like, what can they actually do, like otherwise?
Oh, look, we should have had thousands of people on the streets 10 years ago, if you really want to be honest. But
we did, though. That's the thing. We have, like, because this is something that comes up, right? We see this with the Irish stuff now. Like, you'll see protests in Ireland, and people will say, oh, you know, if only the British would do this. But we did. We did also go out and protest back in the day. The problem is that the protesting doesn't really achieve anything.
Well, we did for a while, let's say that. But yeah, I don't disagree, mate. I don't want to slag off ordinary people. Like, I think average Brits are still pretty cool.
Well,
some people on our Discord don't agree with me, but
I'm gonna come out as a dickhead and say I read Pareto before he was cool, right?
Yeah.
And he has this concept where he says about you'll have like a rotation of the elites, and he kind of says like you can have all this stuff set up behind the woodwork that you want, but ultimately there will just come a time where the public have just had enough and the elite will just have to be rotated out. He doesn't really give too many specifics about how that would work, and I've been pondering that for a while now about what that would look like. And I still have no fucking clue. I look at the situation now and I think, like, is this the start of it? Is this where things start to take shape? And have we fucked ourselves by being completely behind the curve? But I genuinely have no idea, no clue, and I'm very skeptical of people that seem to have all this mapped out, or claim they do.
I don't know, mate. Look, me, I have some faith in the real Anglo-Celtic people of Britain. But it gets less year by year, because, you know, at some point you got to turn around and say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. How that happens in Britain, I'm not at all sure. I don't know. You haven't said anything for ages, Mitch. What do you reckon? Well, I presume you've been listening to us, unless you've been. Like I was saying, like, you know, I totally agree with Valman. Like, things are getting so bad that at some point you think, people have got to turn around and say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And I keep thinking that about the British people, but they don't do that. They don't go out on the streets and say, we've had enough. That's why I was kind of asking this.
It's like a bit of a black pillar, isn't it, this stream tonight?
I don't think it is, actually. It's just we're trying to talk about what's happening and, like, what's not happening. Like, you would expect after, like, that big, enormous scandal of little English schoolgirls being gang raped by Pakistanis, like, you know, the so-called grooming gang scandal, you would think after that British people would like go out on the streets and say, no,
Well, they
this
did,
is not
though.
happening. Some of them did, yeah, absolutely. Ataman, yeah, some of them did, but it was a minority. But if there had been thousands upon thousands of people doing that, the government would have actually had to have done something about it. You know.
I mean, like the EDL was obviously a very imperfect movement to deal with this, but it was the biggest one at the time, being that it was kind of jumping into the vacuum of the BNP, and they didn't have a formal membership, right? So they had this sort of like membership by association. I mean, if you take it at its word, they had well over 100,000 members. That was people that interacted with them positively, and was sort of associated with their content in some way. And some of their protests and their gatherings were pretty big. It's just that doesn't really that stuff doesn't really work. That's ultimately the problem there.
Yeah, I just don't get it, man. To me, like traditional British people, when they learn about the grooming gang nonsense, as it was called, like there would have been hopefully millions of them on the street, and there was not at all.
I mean,
And if we can't do it for that, what will we do it for?
But you can't just say, oh, we got to take to the streets though, because it doesn't. That's not really a working strategy. We know it's not a working strategy because we've seen it fail in real time. That's not the same as disavowing something like populism, but still.
Yeah, no. I get what you're saying, Ammon, but like, if it had been over the grooming gang scandal, and there'd been millions of people in like all the big British cities and towns protesting about it, the government would have had to do something about it. You know that as well as I do. Yeah, but they would have.
No, but they won't though, because okay, so you've got Muslimic ray guns to look at for this sort of thing.
No, don't agree. I really don't agree. I think if there had been an enormous British reaction to that, and it would have had to have been enormous, like 5-10 million people on the streets sometimes, the British government would have reacted to that. They would have had no choice. It would have set them back about 5 years. And when I say set them back about 5 years, I'm saying that deliberately because that's what they're aiming for.
I mean, the thing about... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go on, Mitch. No, you carry on.
I was going to say, there's a point where Richard is right about where most British people just won't display any bravery unless it's state sanctioned. Like, we can bomb brown people in the Middle East, but protests against those brown people raping people over here, nah, people aren't just brave to do that. You'll still get people like EDL, but the thing is, whenever, I imagine Ataman will agree that Twitter is just full of these people going Muslimic ray guns, and we're just endlessly bring up that clip just to escape having to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's just all talking about grooming gangs does is A, it can act as a black pill, and B, it just confirms that there are some people, mainly on Twitter and on Reddit, that deserve their own special trip somewhere.
To a summer camp where they can learn to concentrate.
Wow, Mitch. Yeah, look, I can't disagree with you to a large degree. I just can't. That wasn't the British people I knew in the 1980s, but maybe it is in the 2020s.
I think.
But I don't disagree with you. I think there's a lot of truth in what you say, man. But it's bloody sad. It's bloody sad. You can't defend your own schoolgirls. Wow. Bloody hell, man.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's just, that's why, for example, I just spend my time on Telegram just looking at, I don't know, like lines in Russia and Ukraine, because I just think if I end up having to think about politics in this country, it's just a massive black pill fest. So
Yeah.
it's just that's the thing. But what? So, for example, you get PA protesting in my area, in my black country, and it's just there's people talking about it, not in the way I'd want them to, but they're talking about it at least. So I'm looking at that and thinking, well, clearly, like, we can criticize PA all we want, but they're the ones who are getting people to talk about them and what they act and what they're protesting against. Because there are hotels not far from me that are housing a lot of these migrants. I've noticed a lot of migrants in my town, just mixture of Ukrainians and like Pajites in my town.
I'm not against PA. I think most of the people in PA are good people. I would trust Mark Collette as far as I would frame the little finger on my left hand, but that's a different story. But most of the people in PA itself, I think they're all right. I got nothing against them. I think most of those are ordinary, patriotic British people. But you can't be run by Mark Collette. You just can't. I'm sorry.
Okay,
but that's only my own humble opinion, of course.
Yeah, well, where that context is, okay, well, yeah, I can agree with that opinion on Mark Collett, but then there's also a question of, okay, well, who can replace him? Because, I mean, that's one of the main things that plagues the right in this country, just a lack of leadership. Like, Mark Collett, say what you're about him, he's the only guy who's risking his head above a parapet alongside Robert Taylor.
Listen, look, Mitch, you're a Russian-speaking guy who follows the stuff in Ukraine fairly closely. You're not a big Azov fan, are you?
Why would I be?
Well, absolutely. Why would you be? But like, probably Mark Collette is.
No, he isn't. He's pro-Russia.
How?
I'm pro-Azov. Just saying.
No, you're not. You're
no,
lying.
I'm not.
no, you're lying.
Have you not seen what he's posted? Like, you'll see videos.
I don't follow Mark Collette, man. I don't follow Mark.
Like, all I will say, he's very pro-Russia. Like, he'll talk about, how Russia's fighting.
So he doesn't like Azov, is that right?
No, he thinks they're like kosher Nazis. Like, they're fighting for Zelensky. So, and Zelensky's a Jew. That's his main shtick. Like, he'll go.
Oh, okay, right now. I'm kind of getting it. So
yeah, but the thing is, yeah. Although there are plenty of right wingers on Twitter you'll find who are like very pro-Ukraine, and they like follow Richard Spence. They've got the EU flag in their bios, and they purport to be like pan-European types. Which, yeah, I mean, you got an EU flag, you call yourself a nationalist, and you're going out there generally supporting everything NATO does, including posting memes of Tony Blair as like some god evil emperor or whatever.
What, the Tony Blair who murdered nearly 700 British soldiers and wounded and maimed thousands more for no purpose whatsoever. Sweet Fanny Adams. That Tony Blair.
I mean, in the case of Iraq, in their case, they'll probably just say, something like, I mean, you get the whole idea of like there being like for the oil, but I'm pretty sure I heard that the oil companies actually suffered from the war, not benefited from it. And generally, it's probably because of Israel, really, yeah.
I don't get it, mate. I don't get it. I'm sorry. Hang on. Jobu, who was a friend of mine, who I still like, says that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah, I know.
I actually think Mark's grown quite a lot since then as well. So,
well, yeah, he may have done, I suppose. I don't really agree with that. His reading list is bullshit, but all right. whatever.
Yeah, but it's just not that important though, is it? Like you're not going to Mark Collette for like great literary takes. So
No. Obviously, any Englishman you go to, you ask for the 3 books he would save, and the first one is Mein Kampf, and the other 2 are written by Americans.
well,
Probably
okay, so hang
not.
on. What would be your pick? Let's say you were asked the question, 3 books. What was the question? 3 books that you could preserve for future generations of English, or we say British children,
And
Anglo.
I
I suppose
know
you'd
I have
say.
no warning on this. Like now,
No,
this
like
is
yeah,
now.
just sort of off the top of your head. Let's go through them and just discuss them. I think because I've
All
asked
right.
this question to people a few times, and
All right. Henry V would be my first one.
the Shakespeare play. Yeah.
Henry V. Yeah.
Mm.
Second one would probably be. Let me think. Jesus Christ.
It is a lot to ask on the spot, admittedly, but still.
Yeah, but he wasn't asked that on the spot. Like he knew why he
Wasn't
was
he?
going to be asked. Well,
I thought it was a
presume.
super chat he got, but anyway.
No, I think he was asked that before. But yeah, all right, that one. Lord of the Rings, second one. Because again, that's a very British book. Third one, let me think. And these are all fiction books, of course. If you ask me non-fiction, I'd give you slightly different answers. Although Henry V is it a fiction book? I guess it's a 50-50.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Kind of, yeah. You know what I'm talking about. All right, third one. What would I say? Third one. Let me think. Jesus.
The Wanderer.
I'm trying to think now. What would I say would be my third one? Soldiers 3. Soldiers 3 by Kipling.
Yeah. I think mine would be John Milton's Paradise Lost.
Yeah, fair enough. Good.
I had a second one lined up and I can't think of it now. Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, because I am from Canterbury, you know, they're a classic.
Yeah. Fair
and
enough.
Probably also Beowulf. Since we're sticking to fiction.
Jovo says Wind in the Willows. Yeah, if you're going to children's books, yeah, for 100, I'd say that. What do you reckon,
Mitch?
I mean, you've got Lord of the Rings, The Wanderer. Third one.
The Wanderer is really good, but that's a poem rather than a book.
I mean, Paradise Lost is a poem, but it was mentioned.
Yeah, it is. It is, but a very long one. But yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Then you got, I suppose, I don't know, for third. I mean, I'll have a look at my bookshelf.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer on the spot, but
it is a very tough question to ask off the top of your head. But none of mine would have been Germans and Americans.
No, I mean, I'm sure if I could be pushed, I'd probably pick maybe something by a German. Like I quite like Faustus, and obviously,
yep, yeah,
there's
like
a Robert Marlowe version of it, right? Which obviously, you know, I'm a bit keen to Marlowe because he's also a local, but you know, there were some German versions of that are particularly quite good as well. So,
yep. No, look, I like a lot of German books, but like they wouldn't be in my top 3. But I agree with you about Faustus and that sort of thing. Absolutely. Hang on, Mitch is having a look, so we'll see.
Yeah, I put in chat. It's either Beowulf or England and Elegy by Scruton.
Yeah, all right, cool. Scruton stuff is good. I like Scruton. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've only read England and Elegy, and I generally would recommend it to others.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. But none of us came out with like Mein Kampf as the first book and two American neo-Nazis as the other book. So that's all I'm saying, all right?
Royal Biscuits in chat atted me, and he said, "Is Lord of the Rings counted as 1 or 3?" Well, I mean, we all know it is 3 books now, but when I first got it and I first read it, I got my copy from my mother, and it was one of those all-in-one editions, which were quite common back then. And supposedly he originally wrote it as one epic, but the publishers wanted him to break it up into 3.
Yeah, it's a very long book otherwise.
Yeah, the one I had was, I can't remember who published it, but it was the one that was like had a green sort of shade to it, and it had like a sort of illustration of Gandalf on the cover walking through a grove of willow trees or something. I haven't got it anymore, sadly. I lost it in a move, but yeah, that was very well thumbed.
Raw Biscuit says, would anyone save anything from C.S. Lewis? Yeah, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is great. I mean, I think most of us would save that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I quite like his. I mean, that's not a fiction, but I quite like his Abolition of Man as well. And I really like his space trilogy as well. I haven't even finished it, but I've read the first two and I really liked them a lot.
Yeah, fair enough. Another guy I would say is the bloke who wrote Master Commander. Brilliant.
Patrick O'Brien.
Patrick O'Brien.
Yeah.
20 books. And they're really like one long book. They're brilliant. They're fabulous. Absolutely fabulous Anglo-Celtic book.
Was he autistic? Because he really goes into the fucking details on those posts.
Yeah, he does.
It's very, it's very masculine in a way.
Yeah. I mean, look, how many people consider Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, one of their favorite films? I know I do. Like,
yeah,
it's in my top
film,
3.
Actually.
Yeah, there's loads of us. I know you, Richard Ford, Lady of Shalott. Loads of people say that's one of my favorite films because it is, and that actually has bits of at least 3 Patrick O'Brien books in it. But if you like Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, the movie, you've got to go and read Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin canon with like 20 books. It's so great. And it's really one long story over 20 books and like 20,000 pages or something. So it's brilliant. It's just great. Like, I reread an Aubrey Maturin book at least 2 or 3 times a year because it keeps me sane. When I get really depressed, I go and read an Aubrey Maturin book.
Yeah,
and I'm not joking. That's the truth.
I've read the first 2. I have got the third one.
Yeah,
HMS Surprise, I think it's called.
Yeah. The HMS Surprise is the third one. Yeah. Oh, it's a great book, that mate. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah, because that's one of the funny things. Is like, because I was talking to someone about this the other day. Because I do pop into Waterstones, which is sadly, because I don't live in Canterbury, but I live quite close to it. Canterbury used to have many bookshops. It hasn't now. I think it's got 4, I believe, and only one of them is of any real size, and that's Waterstones. But the selection in there is horrific. I'm on a bit of an Arthur Conan Doyle marathon at the moment, so I'm reading through like the Sherlock Holmes novels. Yeah, apparently he wrote an essay defending the Boer War. I was going to track that down and read through it at some point, but
he was a war correspondent in the Anglo-Boer War. Yeah, and yes, he did.
Yeah, because Watson in the Sherlock Holmes books is an Afghan Anglo-Afghan vet. Yeah. and I kind of felt like he based that on himself, like that, like it's like a self-insert character.
Maybe. The other guy you should read if you're getting into Arthur Conan Doyle is the guy who wrote King Solomon's Mines. What's his name? I'm trying to remember.
He's Scottish as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I think probably, but he's a great books.
Yeah,
Alan Quartermain and all that stuff.
yeah.
Really,
Franz in chat said the Bat book, Always with Honor, and Mimer of Trouble. Yeah, they're all three of those are absolute bangers, actually. Mimer of Trouble, I think is a fantastic book. I think any sort of young guy who's sort of on the right should pick it up and have a read. It's not even that long. It reads.
Are you talking about Bronze Age pervert here?
Yeah, Bronze Age pervert. But Mimer of Trouble is
sure.
the Mimer of Trouble is the Peter Kemp book, and it's like his memoir of fighting as a volunteer in the Spanish Civil War.
Oh, cool.
And it reads almost more like an adventure novel. It's very cool. Always with Honor is quite bleak, but that's a sort of real hard lesson in like disaster management almost. That's also a fantastic read. And of course, Bap is quite. I find him quite energizing. He's really that's also a very solid book, full of some absolute banger quotes as well.
I don't mind Bap. I except for the very gay nude bodybuilding photos he sometimes puts up. I don't like those, but apart from that, I think Bap's perfectly fine.
Yeah, if you listen to his Caribbean Rhythms podcast, it's a bit. You're not sure whether to take it as full-on political satire or as actual like condensed political thought. But I do listen to it, even though a lot of people really rage on him now.
No, I listen to it because like blokes need to be blokes. I do agree with him on
that. Yeah. And
we were talking about King Solomon's Mines, etc. H. Rider Haggard is the author of those things. I've just checked it, so you need to go and read H. Rider Haggard. Sorry, carry on, mate.
I don't actually know where I was going with that. He was an English writer. I don't know who I was thinking of then. Just trying to look up.
Only an English writer like H. Rider Haggard could have written about King Solomon's Mines and Alan Quartermain, who was this English adventurer in the middle of Africa. He's the only guy who could have written about that.
Yeah.
And I think he became a Sir in the end. I think he was Sir H. Rider Haggard eventually.
Did King Solomon's Mines inspire Heart of Darkness?
Not really, no.
Right, okay.
Heart of Darkness was I think he was Polish, wasn't he? The dude who wrote and the movie that was based on it was the very famous Vietnam film.
Yeah, Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. No, I don't think he did. No, the dude who wrote that film got involved in the British Merchant Navy, like the civilian Navy, and he did some trips with the civilian Navy, and that's where he got his films from. Sorry, not his films, his novels from, like Heart of Darkness, for example.
Yeah.
Conrad.
Joseph Conrad. Yeah. Polish-British novelist.
Yeah, but he served in the British Merchant Navy, the civilian Navy, for a few years, and that's really where that came from, I think. So yeah. But yeah, well, I mean, a great writer. I mean, I love his stories are great. no reason not to like them. But yeah, I mean, Heart of Darkness, of course, is based on the Belgian Congo.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, you can kind of transpose that, because that story's been brought back to life in many iterations. There's a game as well. There's a computer game called Spec Ops: The Line, which they said was very heavily influenced by Heart of Darkness. And if you play it, it kind of ruins your ability to play any other computer game ever again. But you can also very much see the parallels, because it's kind of a very, very dark satire of the sort of hero complex of playing games. But yeah, that's also pretty good piece of medium. Very, very good use of the medium of gaming as well.
The other thing I'd say is go and watch that Chinese documentary. What's it called? And you've
Empire
seen
of Dust.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you, Mitch. Empire of Dust. Go and watch that. You by all means go and watch Heart of Darkness, but then watch Empire of Dust after it, and you'll kind of work out that somewhere between the two, something went wrong, and it had to do with Africans.
Yeah, yeah, that is an absolute classic. Yeah, the other Scottish author I was trying to think of was Robert Louis Stevenson, who was the guy that wrote Treasure Island.
Oh yeah. And another excellent British author. Really good guy.
It's so hard to condense to condense English literature for future generations down into 3 books. It's an impossible task. No.
I think you could say give you 30 books and you'd still struggle if it was just British authors.
Yeah,
30 books, British authors, you'd still, like, if you thought about it, you would still struggle to put your best authors in that 30 books, because there are so many.
Yeah.
And it's because we're so untalented and just straight white men. That's all it is.
Raw Biscuit's calling me out. You still need to pick up Huxley. Yes, I do. I still need to read Huxley.
Yep, Huxley is good too. I agree with that. But yeah, I don't know, guys. Look, I'm not sure any people in the entire history of the universe have been as talented as the British. And I'm not saying that because I'm an Englishman. I'm saying that because it's just true. Try and find any people in the history of the world who have been as talented as the British, and the only people who come even close are the ancient Romans. And all right, we've lost a fair number of their books, so maybe they were bad, but modern times, it's the British guys.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know about you, but I think that's a good place to end on. But either way, I need to go. So
thank you very, very much for joining, and I know you had a busy day today, so thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. I'll talk to you all later. Don't forget, you got an entropy to read.
Have I? Oh God.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave you to it.
I'll check it at the end. Mitch, what do you think, mate? I presume as you speak Russian, you'll be fairly in favor of like Russian literature, of which there is much good stuff.
I mean, as much as like I like Russian literature, it's only really Crime and Punishment I've really bothered with. I've tried to read some of Tolstoy's books, but they're so damn long. I can't deal with, let's say, 900 pages for one single book.
Have you not read War and Peace then?
I've read like certain pages of it, of like PDFs and whatnot, and I've actually got like a copy of it, but I just looked at 908 pages, I think it is, and I've just procrastinated about it. I'm halfway through.
I have read it, but I read it in 2 halves with a year in between. So, yeah.
Yeah. Same goes for that Anna Karenina, I think it's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Anna Karenina, yeah.
Yeah, that's also a pretty damn long book as well. And I just thought, I mean, to be fair, it's also like it's basically like a Jane Austen book, which it's not really going to be for me anyway. Then there's
I think you'd
what else?
like. I think you'd like War and Peace. War and Peace is actually pretty good. I get what you're saying about Anna Karenina, but War and Peace is not bad. And bear in mind, Tolstoy was a Russian artillery officer in the Crimean War, so like he kind of knew what he was talking about, which like makes things a bit more realistic.
Yeah. If anything, when it comes to like Russian culture, it's like mainly like artwork. Like you'll see paintings of, I don't know, like Russian Kievan Rus princes who fight against the Mongolians, and it's all in the painting. Or you know, you get Ivan the Terrible killing off his eldest son, and then that dooms Russia to the time of troubles. That's like sort of a culture. Then I don't know. And then there's like music, which I mean, I can love English music, like for example, like Rule Britannia and I Voted in My Country. But then there's also like Russian music, which can also be can also pull at your heartstrings. But like for example, I don't know, like you'll get Soviet World War II songs where you just think it's, you know, you don't even have to be on the side of the Soviet Union in World War II, but you can feel what those songs could kind of impart onto you as a listener.
Yeah, no, okay, I can get that.
Yeah, then you get like Russian songs today where it's like, I don't know, like one song called literally called just VDV because it's all about like, it's like the paratrooper anthem, and that's all about like camaraderie.
Yeah.
Whereas
the guys
I mean,
in the stripy shirts you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, meanwhile, like you take a lot of the British Armed Forces today, and it's like what the only one bringing out damn good adverts these days are the Royal Marines. And I remember that advert from like a few years back where he was a Marine, he was keeping his cool while a tarantula or whatever was crawling all over his face.
Which wouldn't be that scary because they're not deadly, but yeah, all right.
I mean, do you imagine? I mean, most people, you can imagine, are very uncomfortable with having a spider crawl all over their face, even if it's not poisonous. It's like black people are generally afraid of snakes, even the ones that aren't poisonous, just
For
because
sure.
it's like
For sure. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with any of that, mate. The last good Royal Navy advert I saw was for the Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm, who have scored every single British air-to-air kill since 1948. But that's just me. But yeah.
Yeah. I know one book I need to start reading again is I got this. To be fair, it's Max Hastings, which I imagine you have a lot of criticism for, but it's only Falklands War you've got.
Look, I Max Hastings once gave me a middle spread in the Daily Telegraph on a Saturday. So I don't really hate him, but I understand what you're saying. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean,
and I do really hate his opinion on World War One, for example, which he thinks Britain should have joined.
I mean, I've seen his opinions. Like some people on Anglo Twitter used to say, like, "Oh, pretty much he's of the opinion of, oh yeah, World War One was just, oh well, the evil Kaiser and all this, and Germany had to be taken down the peg, and also that,
yeah, crap is what my opinion of that is. Absolute rubbish. Like he gave me he gave me a middle page spread on the Daily Telegraph in about 1985. Don't have to like him now. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's what? I mean, you take, I don't know, the Germans invading France in 1914 and winning. I mean, you get some people who frame it as the Germans would have annexed all of France, which I'm thinking, I just don't think they would have done it.
Of course they would not have. Listen, Apostolic Majesty has just done a stream, a couple of streams actually, on exactly this. Go and watch those. Germany was never going to even annex the Channel ports, because annexing the Channel ports would have guaranteed them a war with Britain. They wouldn't have done it. Why?
Yeah, it's not just that. I mean, if you annex France, we would have to deal with a guerrilla warfare right next to them. Meanwhile,
they were never going to do it, mate. They were never going to do that. That was nonsense. They would have probably taken a few little tiny bites out of France, maybe out of Belgium too, but they wouldn't have gone to the coast, because going to the coast would have guaranteed them a war with Britain, which the Kaiser never wanted.
I mean, but then there's the question of, well, we have that London Treaty, didn't we, where we said, okay, well, we have to come to the defence of Belgium if it were to be invaded by
that London
Holland.
Treaty was also signed by Prussia and France. So why did Britain have to particularly do it?
Well, it's like nowadays you get the whole, in 1993, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in exchange for Russia recognising Crimea as part of Ukraine, and that's generally like what every pro-Ukraine guy
So just
says,
lies, basically, Rich. It's just lies.
Well, it's not that. I mean, circumstances change when it comes to treaties. Like, I don't know. For example,
but I'd agree with that. Circumstances do change when it comes to treaties. But as far as I'm concerned, the original sin of Britain and the British Empire was going to war in 1914, followed by raising a mass army. Like, that was the original sin of the British Empire. Had we not done that, Britain today would be in a vastly better position, and World War II would probably never have broken out. That's my opinion.
But then on the whole mass army, there's also the opinion of, okay, well, the British armed forces, like especially the army, was too small to really do much beyond defend the colonies. I mean,
all we should have done was gone around. If you were going to declare war in 1940, and I wouldn't have even done that, I would have had an armed neutrality where the largest navy in the world by far would have said to the Germans, if you come into the North Sea or the Channel, we'll sink you. But if you don't do that, you can stay in the Baltic and fuck around as much as you like. That's what I would have said. And the British Army would have been stood there neutral. However, it would have been, had the Germans done anything Britain did not like, we could have done what we actually did in any case and sent the British Army to every single German colony around the world and just captured it. And the German Navy couldn't have done a damn thing because the German Navy could not get out of the Baltic.
Okay, but there's also there's the argument that Germany didn't really care much for the colonies as we did. Because, I mean, Bismarck...
That's fine. And that's fine. All I'm saying is Britain could have turned around and said to Germany, don't take any Channel ports. Don't come out of the Baltic. And if you defeat France, that's great. Why do we care? Because we wouldn't have cared. And the British Navy and the British shipyards could outbuild Germany like something like 10-5 at least. There was no risk to Britain in that at all. And had we been neutral in 1914, Germany would have won the war certainly by 1916, but probably 1915. And Britain would have become immensely richer by giving the warring pies whatever it was they wanted to buy. And we wouldn't have had 1 million British and Commonwealth dead. What was the loss there? I don't understand it.
So in the case of, let's say, we threatened to take German colonies, the thing is, like Bismarck, for example, he didn't actually want to colonize Namibia.
Absolutely, because he
or-
knew the British could take any ones they made.
Yeah, because I mean, all it would, I mean, the only colony where Germany actually did any good was in Tanzania, where you had Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck, who was just,
Yep.
they call him the Lion of Africa for a reason. But
And
aside from,
he survived until 1918 by running away from every British force that tried to capture him, including into the Belgian Congo. That's how he survived.
okay, but you cannot deny that he was very skilled at
Oh,
surviving.
yeah, he was
amidst
a
being
great guy.
surrounded.
No, I'm not saying he wasn't a good commander. He was. But the only reason he survived was by constantly running away.
Okay, but I mean, there were battles where he took on the Portuguese and pretty much took all their weapons because
Yeah,
Portuguese
well,
forces.
that was the Portuguese. So, yeah, okay. He
Yeah.
didn't do that with the Brits, though.
I mean, I've heard conflicting stories apparently of British colonial forces. Keep in mind, these are not well trained, unlike the BEF that we sent in to 1914, for example, getting routed by very experienced German Askaris, what they're called.
Yeah, they were called that. So were the British ones. Well, that's not true. But all right.
I mean, other French call them travailleurs, I think they were called, or tirailleurs.
Yeah,
something like that.
absolutely. But like the British did a couple of landings in German Tanganyika, which didn't go great, but eventually they landed. And when they did, Lessau von Vorbeck, who was a very good German commander, had no choice but to run away constantly. That's what he did all through the war, run away. Or he would have been captured and surrounded and made to surrender. But he was so skilled that he was able to run away all the time. But that's what he did. Like he wasn't like, he was never attacking a British colony. All German. I watched an Apostolic Majesty stream the other day where he was talking about what might have happened had the Germans won World War One. And what he didn't seem to realize was that every single German colony in the whole wide world by 1916 was captured by the British. There were no more German colonies. The British held all of them. And so were the British going to give them all back at the same time as the Germans were no threat to Britain whatsoever because the Royal Navy was so powerful? There was no possible chance of a German invasion of Britain. I don't think that was going to happen. So there would have been negotiations, but the idea that this German middle Africa would have happened because the Brits would have said, all right, we're going to give you back all these colonies. Can't work out why they would have done that. Maybe they would have, but I can't see why they would have, to be honest. Like, no German colony was defensible against the Royal Navy. No other country's colony was defensible against the Royal Navy. In World War One, like any colony you had, the Brits were going to take off you in World War One because Britain's navy was so much bigger than everyone else's. And then you will get people turn around and say, well, imagine if Italy had joined Germany and Austria and Turkey. Well, the Italian and Austrian and Turkish Navy, and the Turkish Navy, to be honest, was really only the ex-German battle cruiser and light cruiser. There were only two ships that counted for fuck all. Excuse my language. The idea, those three navies were barely, they were just about a match for the French. So anything the British sent into the Mediterranean made the French vastly more powerful than those guys. they weren't going to be able to ship troops to North Africa or anywhere else. But anyway, long way up. I should probably talk about this on a historic stream rather than now. But anyway, all I was saying earlier, Mitch, was as far as I can see, the Russians have mostly captured Bakhmut.
What? I heard they were attacking like the city centre. Last I heard of it, I haven't heard anything more of Bakhmut whatsoever.
All I've heard is they captured the town hall, which I presume is in the centre of the city.
Yeah, that's where they're attacking.
Yeah, apparently they've captured that. And some guys are saying, yeah, they basically captured the centre of the place. And it's 3/4 surrounded as well, which ain't going to be good if you're a Ukrainian.
I've heard, last I heard was the Russians were stalling because they're preparing for this offensive. And they don't know where it's going to come. But the Ukrainians keep saying it's going to happen at this particular date, or it's going to happen at this particular place, which generally means, okay, it might not happen at all. But then they're getting pressure off the West. Okay, on one hand, I'm also hearing the West have given over tanks, but have said to the Ukrainians, yeah, you can't deploy them at the actual front, which begs the question, so why did you bother sending them? If you allegedly
Mitch,
said that.
I don't know what you've heard, but like as far as I've heard, the Ukrainians have less than 100 modern Western MBTs. That ain't going to change anything. It's 100 tanks, big deal.
Yeah, on one hand, there's like the Ukrainians talking about an offensive, but then on the other hand, they're saying the complete opposite, which is we can't launch an offensive because we haven't got enough weapons. But then I'm hearing the Americans are saying like $2.6 billion more of aid. So it's like, it's really just 1 minute you're hearing this, that, and the other, and then you're hearing the complete opposite like a day later. So it can't even make sense fully of what.
I agree. Look, I don't believe in this Ukrainian offensive, and if the Russians have any sense, it won't get anywhere anyway. But we'll see.
I mean, if I was the Russians, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like the West have told the Ukrainians, okay, look, we're giving you all this money and aid and weaponry. You have to show that you're deserving of it because we've got concerns elsewhere. Prove to us that you can actually defeat the Russians and we'll give you more aid. It's like, but then again, there's also some cost fallacy operating it on part of America because
as far as I've worked out, Mitch, like the Russians, like have been, they've been fortifying their lines for the last 6 months. So I don't know. I wouldn't really want to attack any of that with like 100 tanks and maybe 300 armored personnel carriers, which is about what the Ukrainians have been given. I wouldn't want to do that, but give them a go. All I reckon that's going to end up with is even more dead Ukrainians, but all right.
I mean, it's what you've got. I think it was a Czech government who just got elected. They're saying, oh yeah, we'll give you aid to do one more offensive, but if you fail or screw it up in any way, then we can't give you any more aid because we've got our own problems. And then you've got a lot of neocons who are writing articles, like, for example, that one where it exposed all of these like pro-Ukraine types like James Vasquez or whoever, just exposing them all as grifters, basically. So it's like, on one hand, they're still giving aid to Ukraine, so it's like half the neocons still want to support Ukraine to the fullest, but then the other half want to dump Ukraine to focus on Asia because it's like...
Well, America can't win a war focused on both places. I'm not sure they can win a war focused on Taiwan, but they might. Like with aid from the Japanese and the Australians and the Brits, maybe they might, but not if they're not if they're fighting in Ukraine too. I don't think even the most moronic American would think that they can win both those wars. They have to decide.
Yeah, it's what I mean. You've got two main problems afflicting the American sort of empire at the minute. On one hand, they're engaged on two fronts really, but they can't make a decision over which one do they deploy more resources to.
Yep. Although they are slightly different because the Ukrainian thing is like you got to give them land weapons, whereas like Taiwan is about the Navy and the Air Force.
Okay, but let's say for argument's sake you have Taiwan where a navy ends up getting obliterated in like some massive battle in the Strait or whatever. Then it's just all like a case of they've got to fortify as best they can and frustrate any landing attempt. Which, to be fair, I think, because the Chinese army doesn't have any real experience. I mean,
yeah, look, I think there's a very good chance that the Chinese Communist Party would lose an invasion of Taiwan. On the other hand, I think the war in Ukraine is a losing deal for the West, and the more we've seen over the last, I don't know, 8-9 months, the more it's obvious that it's a losing deal for the West. We can't give them enough to win.
Yeah, it's in the case of Ukraine, it's. I mean, then like the second issue that's affecting the American empire is, you got, for example, this trans shooting, and we're going, oh, Trans Day of Remembrance and all this, and it's stuff like this that alienates pretty much everyone outside of Europe to a point where you've got, for example, countries like Brazil, India, where we're saying we're not going to use USD anymore for trade deals. We're going to use yuan or our own currencies, where it's going to come to a point where we're outside of America, Canada, Europe, South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. Everyone else is just going to be using currencies that are not USD. So
I don't know where people. I think, Mitch, plenty of people inside those areas you're talking about in the West are really fucked off that the Americans go on about the trans identity of this murderous filth. Frankly,
I mean,
I don't think it's just people outside it at all.
I mean, Poland is still firmly tethered to the American empire, and they're supposedly anti-LGBT, but they allow all these NGOs to operate with complete free will in cities like Warsaw, Gdansk, and Krakow. So I can't even put faith in like right-wing countries like Poland. The only one really is Hungary, but let's face it, Hungary is head on the way. Anyway, they're going to leave NATO and EU at some point. There's no future for them. I suppose it's a matter of if Russia were to win by the end of the year, and that's a very big if, then Hungary would just feel more confident enough to just go, yeah, screw you all. We're going to leave NATO, leave EU, and go more with the Russians and the Chinese.
Well, I hope the Russians do win before the end of the year, to be honest. But that's just me. I have, how can you possibly support a senile scumbag like Biden or a Indian banker like Sunak? I just don't understand it. They don't do anything I support at all, and they do many things I detest. Piss on Biden and piss on Sunak.
I mean, it's what you take a country like Poland, for example. A few years ago, they were massively anti-LGBT and all this. But as soon as the EU threatens their money, or as soon as America dangles the Russian bear in front of them, they're fully on lockstep with global homo to the point where in 10 years' time, you can just imagine Poland is in the same state as Ireland today.
Well, look, I would say, Mitch, there's a Semiagog has done some good streams on the Promethean strategy, which has to do with Poland. Some of those are worth looking at.
Yeah, I was watching. Yeah, I was
sorry.
watching that one with Apostolic Majesty. But
Yeah,
then,
yeah, it was a good stream. It was a good stream.
yeah,
I
I've only
would
watched half
also,
of it.
I watched all of it. It's good. Go and watch it. It's good. But I would also say, chaps, go and check out Kingdom of the Gael, Gael. He's a good Irish nationalist guy, and not in the sense of Sinn Féin, who want like Brits out, Somalians in, but in the sense of actually keeping Ireland Irish. Thanks for joining me, Mitch. I'm going to play us out of the stream. Sorry, with a song, as I always do. Okay, that was the Jolly Airman, which is an RAF tune, and presumably the picture was a typical, slightly not all that bright RAF Airman. Sorry, I was pretty young. So there we go. But before we go, I do have to look at our entropy stream, where Matthew Markey has given us £3, but he hasn't said anything except testing, 1, 2, 3. So, Matthew Markey, if you're still in the chat, if you want to add anything other than testing, 1, 2, 3, I will do my best to answer your question, since you super chatted it. So there we go. I'll see you for a minute, just seeing if he is. All right, then. It seems he is not. So, all I can say is thank you very much, Matthew Markey. That was the first ever super chat this channel has had. thanks very much, guys, for listening. Please do subscribe to the channel. And I would also really ask you to join the Entropy channel, which you'll find in the description, because we're only going to be on YouTube for a certain amount of time. Thank you very much to my guests, Mitch, and also to Ataman. And we'll see you next week, if I don't do a stream before that, which I may well do. So go well, folks, and take care.